it was 1994 when our father retired from the family-owned company. And back then, my brother and I were facing a succession situation. So who should succeed our father? Back then, we had different jobs, different positions, and we figured that we will interview a couple of candidates for the CEO position. And when we went through those interviews, we realized very quickly that it's pretty easy to talk about strategy, about organization, about future investments for the firm. What became cumbersome was a discussion about the CEO's contract, but about his income. How do we measure the performance of the firm? And more importantly, how do we measure the performance of the CEO? When shall we pay him bonus, and how much shall we pay him? So back then, actually, we decided that my brother takes over the CEO position, but this situation impacted my life quite a bit. Actually, it impacted my professional life to the extent that I founded my own firm in 2002, fully committed to the question of leadership and pay. Let me start by asking you a question. Are you happy with what you earn today? We asked this question to the Swiss population, and you wouldn't believe it, that 83% of the Swiss population is happy or very happy with what they make. At the same time, 56% of the population says, we have no clue how the bonus is constructed. Well, why is that? Because it's too complicated? Or is it because they are not interested? Because they think it doesn't matter? Well, I don't think so. Because 71% say that the way companies pay bonuses impacts the culture of the firm significantly. It impacts the way people behave. It impacts the level of collaboration, of cooperation dramatically. Well, I'm often asked whether money is a special or good incentive for people to go the extra mile, work the extra hours. But you know what? Empirically, you cannot really show that. Actually, for cognitive challenging jobs, money is a real bad tool. There's a broad evidence that for cognitive challenging jobs, money actually does not really foster teamwork. It actually burdens the efficiency of the work, not for repetitive, but for cognitive challenging jobs. What we do know for sure, also very much empirically shown, is that human beings in general, but also employees, react to money very sensitively. So let's think about this. Let's think about how to tackle this money question and pay question within a firm. Let's start with the employees first. What do employees expect? The general answer to this question is appreciation, right? They expect appreciation, but how do we deal with appreciation? Let's make it more precise, more tangible. Appreciation could be split into three major components. Number one, people expect feedback. They expect feedback. They need to know where they stand, where they are, what do I good, and how do I compare to others, right? That's very important to employees, but to human beings in general. Number two of appreciation is development. People expect that they are shown the path, the career, where can I go from here? What is my next step? That's something that employers actually owe the employees. And number three, the third form of appreciation, and I put it very bluntly, it's money, it's pay, right? Yes, people expect, even though officially nobody really works for money, right? But, in fact, this is a very important form of appreciation. The problem is not that companies did not understand or do not understand that those three elements of appreciation is very important. The problem is that the companies over the last 20, 30 years established one single process across all three elements of appreciation. One single process that sometimes is called performance management process, it could be goal setting, management objective, whatever the name is, establishing a single process throughout all three elements of appreciation. Now, this idea is really flawed because this idea of a single process is based on three myths. Myth number one, everything is measurable. Is that really true? Can you measure an individual's contribution to the success of a firm or the team accurately? Can you do that? Myth number 2, if you can measure it, you can rate it. And then companies actually ended up establishing scoring systems. Scoring systems, are something between 1 and 5 or 1 and 7. It could be a AA plus, a double C minus, whatever there is. But the scoring system puts one individual for 1 year performance in one single number. Let's think about this. What does it do to people receiving a number of performance once a year? Let's think about a family father. A family father just went through the rating season and scoring season in his firm. He has his discussion with his boss, right? And then he goes home in the evening, sits down at the family table, and then his wife, because his wife knows that there's scoring season, right? His wife asks him, "So, honey, what are you?" And then he goes, "Well, I'm a 4.0. And then, 4.0 between 1 and 5, say 4.0 is pretty good, right? 5 is very, very good, and 4.0 is okay. It's a good performance. And then she goes, "Well, congratulations, honey. And by the way, what is your colleague David?" And then he looks at her and says, "Well, David is a 4.5. And then her eyes start to darken, right? And she says, "How can it be that David is better than you? It's impossible, right? You work way more, you are way more creative, you put more energy into the firm. It's impossible. You should not accept the score." On top of it, the 2 children sitting at the family table listen to the conversation, right? And they learn that apparently their father is worse than David. So what can this family father do? He has 2 choices. He can either fight it, so he can go back to the firm and say, "I need a better score," right? Or he can flight the situation. He can look for a different job, a different company. Because this demotivating effect was very well and soon understood by managers who distributed scores, the companies and a lot of firms ended up in distributing scores which actually converge to all the same. Everybody gets a 4.1, a 4.2. Everybody's approximately the same, right? Because of this discouragement effect, a lot of companies started to abolish those kind of scoring systems. A large international software firm did this a couple of years ago, and since then, the employees are much happier. As you're aware, a large Swiss bank actually did also abolish the traditional approach, and they realized that the employee engagement went up 25%. And very recently, also a Swiss insurance company announced that they want to change their way and the approach of pay and performance management system. But how do we deal now with this money side? So myth number 1 is you can measure everything. Myth number 2, you can rate it, establish a score. And the myth number 3 is actually that then it even becomes better with money. So this idea makes the situation even worse. Now, the family father not only has a 4.0, but he also carries less money home. So how do we deal with that? What's the solution? Some people say that, let's abolish bonus payments, right? Let's abolish bonus payment and establish fixed pay scheme. And they say fixed pay adjusted on a year-by-year basis, adjusted upwards or downwards. Let's think about this. Because the key problem is, on what grounds do you adjust fixed pay, right? What is it exactly, criteria-wise, that you use to adjust it? And secondly, have you ever seen a lot of fixed pay going downwards on a year-by-year basis? Well, I didn't. So in general, fixed pay regimes actually burden the situation of the firm. They make the cost structure more risky, and it's not a real solution. What I propose as a solution is that you separate leadership from pay. Separating leadership from pay means that you keep the feedback development side, and hopefully without an overall score. Yes, people want to be led, want to have goals, they want to follow through on something and a target, but you need it to separate it from the pay question. In order to do that, you need a mindset shift. A mindset shift going from bonus plan to success sharing. Let me talk about success sharing a little bit. Success sharing does not mean that everybody gets the same. No, that would not be the purpose. Success sharing means that you need to carefully think about where you measure, how you measure, and who gets how much of the success. So where you measure success, right? For smaller firms and mid-sized firms, it's actually possible to do it on a total firm level. But when it comes to different business models or when it comes to larger firms, right, you need to carefully consider where you measure success. Is it a country, a department, a division? Is it on team level, but never on the individual level? How you measure success is actually a very critical question for the future of a firm. I carefully use the word success and not profit, because often companies go out and do some profit sharing, whatever plans, but the profit in itself is a very cold number coming from the balance sheet. In order to make the profit a success, you need to ask a specific question, namely, what's the quality of the profit? How do our customers doing? How sustainable are we really? How future-oriented is our development and research program, etc., etc. Many aspects of a profit which actually are important in order to make it a success. And then you need to ask the question, who gets how much from this success, right? And here you have a broad range of possibilities. You can take somebody's role, function, functional levels, titles, base salaries, whatever there is, but never go back to the individual performance of the last year. What does it do, really, when you change from bonus scheme to success sharing? First of all, a culture of trust is established. A more honest feedback will be given, upward and downward. Suddenly, the managers and the bosses are able to give true feedback, to say, okay, here's where you need to grow, this is where you need to improve. And also the employee has more courage to say, I would like to do this and that, and bring it in. And with that, that's the most important aspect, which is super important for these days, is you make the culture a trustful culture, but you make the culture a more agile culture. Suddenly, for the employees, it's worthwhile to go beyond their task list, right? To go beyond their individual goals of a specific year, because now those goals are not burdened with a score or some money. Let's also think about some practical aspects about success sharing. Companies moving in this direction, there are actually some two typical reactions to that, Managers ask the question, how do we deal then with free riders? Free riders are the ones who work less and get the same type of thing, right? And the answer is, well, it's a leadership problem, right? You cannot delegate leadership into a bonus plan to pinpoint and isolate and identify free riders. And very honestly, when I talk to leadership people and managers, they know exactly where the good and the bad people are within the team. They know they don't need a lot of forms and performance management in order to identify free riders. What do we do with our performance? Well, that's a tricky question, right? You identify those and you realize that you need to do something in order for them to stay. What can you do? I mean, a normal reaction is that, well, let's pay some special bonuses, let's open the money box, right? But if you do that, what happens is in 6 months or 12 months' time, you can be sure that somebody else is coming back to you and say, what do I need to do in order to get the money box? So then you defeat the purpose again. So dealing with our performance means that you need different ways, promotions, other ways on the leadership side to make people happy and stay within the firm. Then let's think about what employees can do. If you interview for a new job, when you go through interviews or you want to test a new company, often in interviews, you ask the question, how is your culture? And the typical answer of firms is, we are a very collaborative culture. We have a trust culture, we have a teamwork, everybody counts. You need to think in our firm. We appreciate your feedback, your creativity. Those are things that are said. But is that really true? What can you do as an employee when you interview for a new job? I usually recommend something silly, which means follow the money. Following the money has to ask a question like, when do I earn more? When do I earn less? And when you then listen carefully to what this company explains to you, you hear very good whether there's a scoring, what kind of system is behind it, and suddenly you realize perhaps what kind of culture it is. So you can make a conscious, a more evident decision about which company you want to join, what kind of culture you want to join. When you think about these days, and you think about the importance of people in every firm, all the days, but especially in these days, when it comes to dynamics of this world and the requirement of having a very agile organization, agile people, having the courage to speak up, having a culture of cooperation, a culture of trust. This is a very important aspect, how you pay people. Because the culture in itself is the key to make a company successful in the future. Or, as Mr. Peter Drucker put it once, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you may add at this point, ill-designed incentives eat culture for lunch. Thank you very much.